Kong Jun was dying for the 9th time this month. Not close to dying. Not in danger. Dying. A rank D wolf lizard the size of a delivery truck had its jaws around his leg, and the last thing he remembered thinking was that his rent was due in 3 days, and he still hadn't paid it. Then his HP hit 0, and instead of a system screen flashing, "You died," it flashed something else. "Warning, host body destroyed. Initiating emergency stat absorption." The wolf lizard's jaw, mid-crunch, suddenly froze. Its eyes went wide. If a monster's eyes can go wide, right before its entire body dissolved into a thick, green mist that poured straight into Jun's open mouth. He woke up on the cave floor a full minute later, alive, leg intact, and with a taste in his mouth like he'd just gargled a swamp. That's when the second notification appeared. Agility +4, permanently acquired from Curse Wolf Lizard. Not experience points. Not a level. A number that was now his forever, sitting in a stat window like it had always been there. And here's the part that should terrify you. Kong Jun had been the weakest hunter in his entire graduating class. Rank F, the kind of hunter guilds don't bother rejecting. They just forget you exist. So the question isn't, how did he survive that wolf lizard? The question is, what happens when a rank F nobody realizes that every single monster in this world is walking around as a permanent upgrade to his own body, and nobody else knows it yet? Let's rewind, because this story started a lot uglier than a green mist and a stat window. 3 months earlier, Jun was living in a Gate City slum, sharing a single room with 2 other failed hunters, surviving on instant noodles and the kind of odd jobs a Hunters Association handed out to people they considered disposable. His stat sheet was a joke. Strength, 9. Agility, 11. The system average for a functioning adult was around 15 across the board. He wasn't weak. He was below the floor. Every gate clearing party he applied to rejected him on sight. Every guild recruiter looked at his rank and didn't even finish reading. The one time he got into a party, out of pity, they left him behind at the entrance of a D rank gate to watch the exit, which everyone including Jun knew meant stay out of our way. That's the night the gate destabilized early. The party inside got trapped. And Jun, who had exactly one skill, a garbage tier ability called Consume, that every hunter guide described as flavor text, no combat application, had to make a decision. Walk away and let 3 people die, or walk into a gate 2 ranks above what killed hunters twice his level. He walked in, and that decision is the reason this story exists. Because what happened next rewrote everything the system had ever told him about his own ability. Here's the part most recap channels would explain in one boring paragraph. I'm not going to do that, because the way Jun found out is way more interesting than the mechanic itself. Consume wasn't flavor text. It had never been tested correctly, because every hunter who had it before Jun was too strong to ever actually die and trigger it. The skill only activates the instant a monster would land a killing blow on the host. And in that split second, instead of taking the death, the host's body forcibly absorbs a monster's core stat and converts it into permanent growth. Translation: most hunters grow stronger by grinding. Jun grows stronger by almost dying on purpose to things that should kill him. Every guidebook calls that suicidal. Jun calls it the only stat growth method in the game that scales with how terrifying a monster is. Because the bigger the threat, the bigger the stat it drops when it dies trying to finish him off. There's a catch, though, and the story doesn't let you forget it. Consume only triggers once per monster, and only if Jun is genuinely about to die, not hurt, not in danger. Actually, mathematically, about to die. Which means every single stat gained in this story is preceded by several seconds of the audience being absolutely certain he's not walking away this time. Back in that D-rank gate, Jun dragged the trap party out on nothing but a stolen sword and dumb luck, absorbing his second stat off a rock high boar that nearly caved his skull in. The 3 hunters he saved didn't even say thank you. They reported him to the guild for a reckless, unauthorized gate entry, because acknowledging that the rank F kid saved him was somehow more humiliating than the near-death experience itself. That should have ended his career. Instead, it's where he met Yuna. Yuna was the guild's top-ranked support healer, and the only reason Jun wasn't fined into homelessness that week. She vouched for him against her entire chain of command, because she'd seen his stat window flicker during the rescue and recognized the absorption pattern from an old, sealed research file her father used to keep. A file about a skill the association had classified and buried decades ago for being too unstable to license. Yuna wasn't interested in June for romance points. She had her own reason to care. Her father, once the association's top researcher into origin skills like consume, disappeared 5 years ago after his research got shut down, and every official record insists he simply resigned. She doesn't believe that for a second, and June's ability is the first real lead she's had since. So she makes him a deal. She trains him. She covers for him. She keeps his ability off the association's radar, and in exchange, when he's strong enough, he helps her find out what actually happened to her father. Every stat he earns after that isn't just power. It's leverage and a mystery neither of them can solve alone. The middle stretch of this story is where it stops being weak kid gets strong and starts being genuinely stressful to watch. Because the near-death growth loop means every arc escalates the exact same way. June finds something just barely capable of killing him, gets absolutely wrecked for several minutes of screen time, and the audience spend the whole fight wondering if this is finally the one where consume doesn't trigger in time. There's a C-rank tunnel arc, where he baits a colony of venom spiders into cornering him alone, and walks out with permanent poison resistance and a reflex stat that lets him dodge attacks he can't even see yet. Foreshadowing a sixth sense he doesn't understand until 3 arcs later. There's the arc where a rival guild, annoyed that a nobody is climbing the rankings, sets him up in a rig gate raid meant to look like an accident. He survives that 1-2, and absorbs a stat off something that was never supposed to be inside a D-rank gate in the first place, a monster 2 full ranks above where it should exist. That's the moment the story stops being about June's growth and starts being about who put that monster there. And this is where the first real twist lands. The monster June nearly died to wasn't wild. It had a leash mark carved into its core, a containment brand used exclusively by the Hunters Association's Black Site Research Division, the same division Yuna's father used to run before he resigned. Somebody in the association isn't just aware that origin skills like consume exist. Somebody has been deliberately feeding overpowered monsters into low-rank gates, seeding a hunting ground for a skill they thought had died out with Yuna's father's research, and June just proved it's still walking around, getting stronger every single time they underestimate him, which means every future kill isn't just a stat. It's a message to whoever's watching that the file they thought was closed just reopened itself. The story's biggest confrontation so far comes when that division sends a rank B enforcer to quietly correct the anomaly. Association speak for making June disappear before he asked the wrong questions out loud. On paper, it's not a fair fight. It was never supposed to be. But here's the thing nobody in that division accounted for. June doesn't need a fair fight. He needs an unfair one that ends in his own near-death. And by this point in the story, that's not a weakness anymore. That's the trigger. The enforcer gets exactly what he came for. A corpse. For about 4 seconds, right before the mist rises, the stat window blinks, and June gets back up with a strength stat that just made him the strongest thing in that gate. He walks out of that fight with more than a stat this time. He walks out with name, the code name of the researcher currently running that division, and Yuna recognizes immediately, because it's the name of the man who signed her father's disappearance paperwork. The rank F nobody wanted in their party just became the only lead in a 5-year-old cover-up, standing on a stat sheet that's now stronger than half the association's top-ranked hunters, and he's not even close to done growing, because somewhere out there, in a gate that hasn't opened yet, something even bigger than that enforcer is already on its way to finish what the Black Site Division started. And if it wants June dead, it's about to make the same mistake everyone else already made.